I used to think that love was supposed to feel like safety, that when you finally found the person who saw you for who you truly were, you could stop running from pain, from loneliness, from the fear of being forgotten. But I was wrong. For on the night that was supposed to be the most beautiful of my life, the night I became his wife, I sat in a room smelling of flowers and perfume, listening to the sound of my heart breaking. The wedding had been perfect, at least from the outside. Above the marble floor, the fairy lights danced. The music floated softly in the air as our guests clapped to our first dance together. He looked like a dream in his navy blue suit, his hand steady on my waist. Everyone said we were meant to be, and I smiled. Even though something inside me felt slightly off, he'd been distracted all week. Phone calls taken in private, long silences broken with half-hearted excuses. When I asked, he said, "It's just work, love. You know how clients are before big deals." And I believed him, because that's what love does. It blinds you with trust. When the reception finally ended, I followed him to the car in my white gown, which trailed behind me like a ghost. We drove to the hotel. He had booked a luxury suite with golden lights, soft champagne sheets, and a balcony overlooking the quiet city. It was almost midnight when we arrived. He asked me to wait in the room while he had to take care of something downstairs. He kissed my forehead, told me he'd be back soon, and walked out. That was the last time he touched me that night. First, I didn't worry. Maybe he spoke to the hotel manager or a friend, I thought. I took my jewelry off, one piece at a time, with each sound of a clasp opening just too loudly in the silent room. Then an hour after, then another. The candles we had lit burned halfway down, and the laughter from the hall disappeared into nothing. That I tried calling him, but he didn't pick up. My hands shook as I typed the words, "Where are you?" But the message just showed one gray tick. I sat on the edge of the bed in my wrinkled wedding dress, my hair falling from its pins, mascara tracing faint shadows under my eyes. The silence was heavy, pressing down like a weight I couldn't lift. And then I heard it. A sound soft at first, like a whisper slipping through the air vents. I froze. It was his voice. I couldn't make out every word, but I knew the tone, that low, tender murmur he used when he was being affectionate. The kind of voice that once made me melt. Only now it wasn't for me. Because he said her name. A name I didn't recognize, whispered softly, followed by a sigh. My heart stopped. I told myself it couldn't be. That maybe I was imagining it. That exhaustion or nerves were playing tricks on me. But then I heard a soft laugh, a woman's, distant yet distinct. Something inside me just shattered. I stood up, my legs trembling, and pressed my ear against the wall. The sound was coming from the suite next door. For a moment I couldn't breathe. He wasn't at the lobby, he wasn't busy, he was here. With someone else. I didn't remember crossing the room. I didn't remember opening the door or stepping into the dimly lit corridor. I just remember my heartbeat. Loud, violent, almost painful. I got to his door and stopped. My hand hovered over the handle, but I couldn't turn it. I could still hear the muffled sounds, his voice, the rhythm of movement, the laughter that didn't belong to me. The world spun. I walked away, back to our suite, back to that bed where he would hold me, whisper promises, and make me believe we had forever. I sat there until dawn, staring at the pale blue light creeping through the curtains. When he finally returned, he smelled faintly of perfume. Not mine. He froze when he saw me awake. "Hey, you're still up," he said, trying to sound casual, running a hand through his hair. I didn't answer. I just looked at him. The man I had loved for 5 years. The man I had said yes to in front of everyone I knew. The man who left me all alone on our wedding night. He walked towards me slowly, but I stepped back. "Where were you?" I asked. He hesitated. "I told you, love, I had to." "Don't lie," I interrupted, voice breaking. "I heard you." He froze. "What?" "I heard you. Through the wall. You said her name." For a while he said nothing. His gaze broke away, his throat constricting. Then he whispered, "You don't understand." Those words, I will never forget them, because they weren't a refusal. They were a confession. It wasn't until later that morning that I found her name again. Not whispered this time, but written. On his phone. Dozens of messages, some from before our wedding. Her name was Lynette. He had met her at work. She was just a friend. At least that's what he told me months ago when I saw her number saved under a false name. And I had believed him. He said it started as a mistake, that he'd tried to end it. Marriage to me was supposed to make everything right. But love that's built with lies doesn't heal, it decays. When I asked him if he loved her, he didn't answer. Silence was enough. The days that followed blurred together. I moved through them like a shadow of myself, smiling for the world while something inside me was quietly dying. He tried to fix things, brought flowers and apologized, asking me to forget that night. But how do you forget the moment your heart realizes it was never enough? We stayed under one roof for a few weeks pretending. Posing as newlyweds, pretending to eat and sleep and breathe like normal couples. But every night as he would turn off the lights I could feel the distance, the invisible wall built from guilt and betrayal. Sometimes I caught him staring at his phone, his fingers hovering over her name. I once even heard him cry in the shower. And that hurt too, because even in his guilt I wanted to comfort him. That's the curse of love. It keeps you tied to the person who breaks you. One night I packed a small bag. He was sleeping, or at least pretending he was. I no longer cared. I left my ring on the bedside table and a note that simply said, "You left me alone once. I'm doing the same now." The air was cold outside, the streets empty. I walked until the hotel was out of sight. I did not know where I was going, only that I needed to move, to escape the silence that had become too heavy to bear. I stayed at a friend's apartment for a while. I ignored his calls, his messages, the letters he sent through mutual friends. He had told me he broke things off, that he wanted another chance. But some things once broken can't be rebuilt. Months went by. I learned to live alone again. To make coffee just for one, to fall asleep without waiting for footsteps in the hallway. But healing wasn't beautiful. It was slow, messy, and full of memories that I couldn't erase. I once found her picture by accident, just scrolling down the website of the company she works for. She was beautiful. I hated her for existing, even though deep down I knew he was the one who made the choice. Sometimes I would see couples in cafes, laughing over coffee, fingers interlocked, and my chest would tighten. I used to be that girl. Now I was just the woman who got left behind on her wedding night. He contacted me a year later. He wanted to meet. I agreed, though it was very much against my better judgment. We met at the same cafe where we'd had our first date. Irony at its cruelest. He looked tired, older somehow. I could see regret in his eyes, but also something else, resignation. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "You didn't deserve any of it." "I know," I replied. He told me he had left her months ago, that it wasn't worth it, that he thought about me every day. But I didn't feel anything, no anger, no longing, just emptiness. "You broke something in me," I said quietly. "I know," he whispered. "And I will never forgive myself." We sat in silence for a while. Outside it began to rain. People ran for cover, but I didn't move. The rain felt honest, cold, cleansing, real. When I finally stood up to leave, he said, "Do you think you'll ever love again?" I smiled sadly. "I think I'll learn to. But not like before." That night I went home and pulled out the wedding dress I'd kept locked away. The fabric had yellowed some, the lace frayed. It no longer looked magical, just heavy. I took it to the balcony, held it for a long time and let it go. Wind caught it and it was carried over the edge, and for an instant it seemed it was flying free. And I realized maybe I was too. He left me alone on our wedding night. And maybe that was the night I began to find myself again.